I was 28 at the time, driving full-time for Uber in Phoenix. This was around late June 2021, when the summer heat was brutal, the kind of heat where even the breeze burns your skin. I usually worked the late shifts, mostly because the traffic was easier and the tips were better from the bar crowd. That night started out pretty standard. I'd done a few rides, a drunk couple arguing about pizza, some guy who kept falling asleep mid-sentence, the usual. Around 12:40 a.m., I got a ping from a gas station off Interstate 10. The name said Alyssa. It wasn't in a great part of town, lots of flickering streetlights, cracked pavement, and abandoned strip malls. But I'd picked up people from there before. Sometimes folks just needed to get home from work. I pulled into the station and saw her immediately. She was standing near the side of the building under a buzzing light, young, maybe early 20s, wearing a long black hoodie, even though it was almost 100 degrees out. She wasn't looking at her phone or anything, just kind of standing there, arms crossed, like she was waiting for something or someone. I rolled down my window and called out, "Uber for Alyssa?" She looked at me, didn't smile, didn't nod, just walked over and got into the back seat. "Where we headed?" I asked, starting the app. She finally spoke. "North Mountain." Her voice was quiet but clear, almost too calm. I glanced at the destination. It was a good 25 minutes away, out toward a nature preserve, a lot of dark, winding roads through residential hills. We pulled out of the gas station, and at first, she was just quiet. That wasn't unusual. I don't force conversation if the rider doesn't want it. But maybe 5 minutes into the ride, I noticed something strange. She wasn't using her phone, wasn't looking out the window. She was just staring straight ahead, not at me, not at the seat, just into space. Her hands were clenched in her lap, like she was holding something invisible. "Long night?" I asked, trying to break the ice. She responded without looking up. I didn't think he'd be there again. It caught me off guard. "Who?" I asked. She didn't answer, just tightened her grip on her own hands. I chalked it up to something personal, maybe a rough night with a boyfriend or an ex. I didn't push it. As we got closer to the foothills, the houses started thinning out. The streetlights got fewer, the roads more narrow. It was the kind of area where even GPS gets a little confused. Eventually, we reached a street that dipped into a cul-de-sac at the edge of a gated neighborhood. I looked at the app. The blue dot was pointing straight down a dirt road that led past the gate and into what looked like a private service road. I slowed down. "This it?" I asked. She didn't answer. I looked in the rearview mirror, and I kid you not, she was smiling. But not in a happy way. It was forced, like someone imitating a smile they'd seen in a movie. I cleared my throat. "Hey, is this the right address?" "This doesn't look like." "Keep going," she said. The way she said it made my stomach tighten. Something in her voice changed, less calm, more cold. Against my better judgment, I kept driving. Just a little further, I told myself. Maybe there was a guest house or a trailer up the road. Maybe her GPS was just slightly off. The road curved into a small open area, surrounded by low hills and desert brush. No houses, no buildings, just a broken down utility shed and a burned out car that looked like it hadn't moved in years. "This isn't right," I said. But before I could say another word, she opened the door and stepped out. I called after her, "Hey, wait, "Is this really where you're going?" She turned back and looked at me. Not angry, not scared, just blank. "I'll walk from here," she said. And then, get this, she started walking toward the burned-out car. At that point, I was done. I marked the ride as complete and started backing up. But as I turned the car around, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The car, the one that looked abandoned, it had a fresh set of tire tracks leading up to it. Like someone had driven it there recently. And right before I pulled away, I saw it. Someone was sitting inside it. Not her. Someone else. I couldn't see their face clearly, just a shape, a head, low in the driver's seat, watching. I drove off fast, didn't look back. My hands were shaking. When I got back onto the main road, I pulled into a Circle K and just sat there for 20 minutes trying to figure out what the hell just happened. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I even say? Hey, I dropped off a creepy girl in the desert and there was a weird guy in an old car. Still, something about it didn't sit right. Later that night, I went back to check my trip history. The ride was gone. No trip under Alyssa. No fare, no record. I called Uber support. They said there was no trip under that name, not even a canceled one. Nothing. To this day, I don't know who or what that was. Maybe it was some weird prank. Maybe she used a fake account that got deleted. Or maybe something way worse. But I'll tell you this, I never take pickups from that gas station anymore. And if a rider ever tells me to keep going past where the lights end, I don't. It was mid-December 2022, and I was driving Uber full-time in Chicago. The winters here are brutal, and that night was no exception. Wind chill in the negatives, snow crusted on the sides of the streets. The kind of cold where your teeth hurt if you breathe wrong. I just finished a ride dropping off a guy at a hotel downtown and was considering calling it a night. But right as I was about to log out, I got one last ping, a pickup from a residential neighborhood on the south side. Name said Monica. I hesitated for a second. It was late, almost 2:15 a.m., and that area wasn't exactly known for being quiet or safe. But I figured I'd take the ride, then head home. I pulled up to the location, an older two-flat with snow piling up on the porch steps. There weren't any lights on in the windows, not even a porch light. But standing in front of the house was a woman wearing a long winter coat, hood up, scarf over her mouth. I rolled down the window just a bit and called out, "Monica?" She nodded, didn't say a word, just walked over and got in the back seat behind me. As soon as she closed the door, I felt this weird tension. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, more like someone holding their breath. The ride was supposed to be a 20-minute trip to the edge of the city, a residential street with mostly older homes, closer to the industrial parks. Seemed like a strange place to head to this late, but I didn't question it. I glanced at her in the mirror. She had her hood pulled low and her scarf still wrapped around her face. Her eyes were down, locked onto her lap. "You staying warm back there?" I asked, trying to keep things friendly. She didn't respond. Just sat there completely still. I thought maybe she didn't hear me, so I asked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Now I'll admit, I've had quiet passengers before. Some folks just want to zone out, but there was something unnatural about how still she was. No phone, no movement, not even blinking. About halfway through the ride, the roads started getting worse, icy, unplowed. I slowed down and made small talk again, more to calm myself than anything. "You heading home, or?" She finally moved, not her head, just her hand. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled something out. It was a piece of paper. She leaned forward slightly and passed it between the seats. I took it and glanced down. It was a photo. A printed, faded photo of a man, maybe in his late 40s, standing outside what looked like a cabin in the snow. No caption, no name, just the man staring at the camera. I glanced back at her. "What's this?" I asked. Her eyes met mine in the mirror for the first time, but she still didn't say anything. I handed the photo back, and she took it without a word. She put it away, leaned back, and returned to that still, silent position. Something about the whole thing had me rattled. I didn't want to ask more questions. I just wanted to finish the ride and be done. We eventually pulled onto a road that looked barely plowed. The houses were spread out, most of them dark. I followed the GPS as best I could until it told me to turn into a driveway. It was narrow, lined with snow-covered bushes, and led to a small, run-down house at the very end. No lights, no cars in the driveway, no signs of life. "This the place?" I asked. No answer. I turned around. She was staring at the house now. Then, softly, for the first time, she spoke. "He's not here anymore." Her voice was hoarse, strained, like she hadn't spoken in days. I said, "Do you want me to take you somewhere else?" But she didn't respond. She just opened the door and stepped out. As she walked up the snowy path toward the house, something made me roll down my window a bit. I listened. The snow crunched under her boots, but only for a few steps. Then nothing. I looked up. She was gone. No trace of her. There were no footprints in the snow past the middle of the walkway, like she just vanished. I sat there, stunned, for maybe a full minute. Then I put the car in reverse and slowly backed out. I wasn't sure if my eyes were playing tricks on me or if I was just exhausted, but I knew something wasn't right. On my way home, I kept replaying it in my head. The photo, the silence, the disappearing woman. And then I got curious. I still had the pickup location saved in my trip history. I pulled over, opened Google Maps, and searched the address. That's when the real chill hit me. The house I'd picked her up from had been vacant for over 4 years. There'd been a fire in 2018. The property was boarded up, condemned. The article even showed a photo. Same porch, same cracked stairs, same layout. But the scariest part? There was a man in the article photo, an older guy who used to live there. It was the same man from the picture she handed me. I don't know who she was. I don't know how she requested the ride, or if she even existed in the first place. But that photo? I never saw her put it back in her coat. And when I got home and checked the back seat, the photo was there, lying perfectly flat where she'd been sitting. This happened in July of last year. I was 24 at the time, living in San Diego for grad school. I'd gone to a house party near campus with some friends. It wasn't a crazy party, just a backyard get-together. Cheap beer, Bluetooth speakers, folding chairs. I left a little after midnight. I wasn't drunk, just tired and ready to be home. One of my roommates had driven there with me, but she was staying the night with her boyfriend, so I called an Uber. I remember the air being warm and still, the kind of thick, late summer heat that makes you feel sticky. I waited at the curb under a dim streetlight. A couple people were still out front smoking and talking, but otherwise it was quiet. The app said the car was 3 minutes away, a silver Toyota Corolla with the name Caleb. A few moments later, a silver car rolled around the corner and stopped right in front of me. I opened the back door and said, "Hi for Jenna?" The driver nodded, but didn't speak. He was wearing a dark baseball cap and had both hands on the wheel. I figured he was just one of those drivers who didn't like to chat. I got in. The moment I closed the door, I felt weird. Not scared exactly, but something was off. There was this faint smell in the car, like chemicals or old plastic. And I noticed there was no phone mounted on the dashboard, no GPS, no Uber decal on the window. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he just preferred using headphones for directions. But then, the car didn't move. We sat there for about 20 seconds, just idling. I cleared my throat and said, "Is everything okay?" The driver still didn't say anything. He just slowly reached down and turned the radio on. It was playing static, not music, not a station, just static. At that point, my gut was screaming. I reached for my phone to double-check the Uber info. And that's when it hit me. The license plate didn't match. Neither did the make. This car wasn't a Corolla. It was a Camry. My heart started pounding. I opened the app and saw a message from the real Caleb. "Hey, I'm outside. I think you got in the wrong car." I froze. I looked up at the rearview mirror. The man was staring at me through it. Not moving, not blinking. I panicked. I didn't want to scream or alert him that I knew. So I forced a shaky laugh and said, "Oh my God, I think I got the wrong car. I'm so sorry, my Uber is down the street." I reached for the door handle. It was locked. I tried again. Nothing. "Can you unlock the door?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't move. I said it again, firmer this time. "Unlock the door." Still nothing. Then he slowly turned his head to look at me directly and smiled. Not like he was amused. Not like he found it funny. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes, the kind that made my stomach flip. I reached into my purse without breaking eye contact and pulled out the small can of pepper spray I always carry. "Open the door, or I'll use this." He looked at the spray, looked back at me. Then, wordlessly, he hit the lock. I bolted out of the car and ran down the block toward a second silver car that had just pulled up. It was the actual Uber. I got in and told him everything. The driver, Caleb, looked genuinely disturbed. He called the police for me while I tried to calm down. I didn't get a license plate. Didn't see where he went. By the time the cops arrived, he was long gone. But the worst part, when I explained everything, where I was standing, the car he was driving, how he never spoke, one of the officers said this wasn't the first time something like that had been reported in the area. In fact, they'd been investigating a string of near-identical incidents for the past month. Fake rides, silent drivers, unlocked cars parked just down the block from parties or bars. No one had been hurt yet. But then the cop told me something else. A neighbor's doorbell camera from the house across the street had picked something up earlier that night. Footage showed a man in a baseball cap and black hoodie parking a silver Camry 2 hours before I called my Uber. He was sitting in the front seat the entire time, waiting 2 full hours, just sitting there with the engine off, headlights off, watching the street. He wasn't some random creep who happened to pull up at the right moment. He was already there, waiting for someone, maybe anyone, to walk up to his car. And I did. I walked right into it. I live in Texas, not the big city kind of Texas you see on TV, more like dusty back roads, gas stations that close by 9 p.m., and towns where everyone knows each other's name. In the fall of 2021, I started driving for Uber part-time. I worked nights mostly. After my kids went to sleep and my wife turned in, I'd hit the road to make some extra money. Most nights were uneventful. A lot of airport runs, grocery store drop-offs, sometimes folks heading to late-night shifts or getting back from bars. I never expected anything weird out here. We don't get the city crowd. Everyone's pretty normal. But one night changed how I saw everything. It was a Friday around 11:45 p.m. and I had just dropped off a couple in a nearby town. As I was heading back toward home, I got a ping. Pickup, County Road 216, destination, unknown, seriously. The app just said to be entered by rider. That already struck me as odd, but it was only 9 minutes away, and I figured maybe the person was just older or didn't know how to use the app properly. So I accepted the ride. I drove down the main highway, then turned onto County Road 216, a long, unlit stretch of gravel road lined with cattle fencing and the occasional rusted mailbox. No houses in sight, just dark fields and the occasional tree groaning in the wind. I kept checking the pin. It said I was getting close. Finally, I saw something up ahead, a figure standing alone at the edge of the road under a crooked utility pole. I slowed down and pulled up next to him. He was tall, thin, wearing an old tan coat, dark jeans, and a wide-brimmed hat. He didn't have a bag or anything with him, just his hands in his pockets. I rolled down the window and called out, "You call for an Uber?" He nodded, didn't say a word. He walked around and got in the back seat. No greeting, no small talk, just silence. As soon as he sat down, the air in the car felt wrong, cold, somehow. And that was strange because I hadn't even turned the AC on. I glanced at him in the mirror. He was sitting straight, hands on his knees, eyes forward, not blinking, not looking at me. I said, "Where we headed, sir?" He waited a moment, then said in a low, gravelly voice, "Keep going. I'll tell you where to turn." That's when my gut started churning. The way he said it, like it wasn't a suggestion, like he was giving orders. Still, I figured maybe he was just one of those off-the-grid types. So I started driving. We went for miles. No turns, no lights, just winding back roads through the dark. The further we drove, the worse I felt, like I was being pulled into something. About 10 minutes in, I asked, "So, how far are we going tonight?" He didn't answer, just stared out the window. I tried again. "You visiting family around here?" Nothing, just silence and the sound of gravel crunching under the tires. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "Take the next left." It wasn't a road, exactly. More like a dirt path, half overgrown, with an old wooden post beside it. No signs, no markings, but I turned. I don't know why. We bumped along this trail for maybe 2 minutes before we reached a clearing. That's when I saw it. An old church, half collapsed. White paint peeling, stained glass shattered. One side of the roof caved in. There was no driveway, just grass and mud. The man leaned forward and said, "Stop here." I did. Slowly, he opened the door, but didn't get out right away. Instead, he turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "Tell the next one not to follow." I stared at him. What? He stepped out and walked toward the church. No flashlight, no phone, just walking. I watched him disappear into the dark doorway. I sat there frozen for maybe a full minute, heart pounding, hands gripping the wheel. Then I tapped "End Ride" on the app. But the app was frozen. No fare, no name, no profile picture, just a gray screen. I restarted my phone. Nothing. It was like the trip never existed. I drove home shaking, checking my mirrors the whole way back. The next morning, I reported the issue to Uber support. They told me no trip had been logged between 11:45 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. When I pressed further, they said the location I was describing, County Road 216, wasn't even in their coverage area. But that's not the worst part. A week later, I was talking to a guy at the local hardware store. I mentioned the old church, described where it was. He went pale. He told me that church had burned down in 1984. Arson. Killed 2 people inside. One of them, a preacher who had been meeting someone late at night. No one was ever arrested. The man they suspected? Tall, thin, tan coat, wide-brimmed hat. Disappeared that same night. No one ever saw him again. Until, I guess, I picked him up.